I want to get right to that breaking news. Police in Dallas are responding to a shooting at an ICE facility. They say a shooter is down from a self-inflicted injury after at least 3 people there were shot. And the acting director of ICE, Todd Lyons, is with us now to tell us the latest. Director Lyons, thank you for joining us. I know it's a busy time, and I know this is all still breaking, but what do we know so far?
So what we know so far definitely is that there was a shooter, active shooter at the Dallas location about 7:40 East Coast time. It appears to be a sniper from an elevated position. Initially 3 individuals were shot. We do have multiple fatalities. All ICE agents and officers at the location are accounted for right now. It's still an active scene. From what we know, the shooter died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Dallas Police Department and the Texas Department of Public Safety have been great help to secure the scene. So it's still active right now in the sense that we're still trying to learn more why this happened. Anyone else is involved, and just really securing the area and making sure our people are safe.
Well, any more information on the suspect here?
No, we haven't heard anything yet. We're still waiting to hear from the locals who are securing the scene at a location away.
Or any of that?
No, not yet.
What about the victims?
So we're still working with the victims right now. 3 we're taking to local hospitals. I am hearing, though, that there are fatalities right now. You know, obviously our thoughts and prayers are going out to everyone in that scene. Kind of we were talking before we came on, you know, that's the office I grew up in. I know exactly that area. There was a secure location. The shooter obviously fired into a spot where our officers and agents would be inside of a secure location, where we're doing a lot of our process with our arrested individuals. So it's definitely a scary time, especially with this increase of violence against law enforcement. It's just it's very stressful right now.
But you say all officers and agents are accounted for, so the victims are not officers or agents from ICE?
They're not employees of ICE. We are getting preliminary reports that some of our detainees are possible contract staffers. We're still working through that. Obviously, it's still fluid as far as notifying families and things like that.
And can you tell me what was happening at the facility when the shooting happened?
So that area is what's considered our Sally Port. It's a secure location where we bring in arrested individuals for processing, for patting down, for transported out, different things like that. So it's a secure location, but it's not covered. And that's where I think the shots came in, from an elevated position down into the location.
We heard earlier that the shooter died of a self-inflicted injury. Are investigators looking for any other shooters? Any possibility this person wasn't working alone?
Well, anytime there is a shooting like that, we want to make sure everyone's safe and secure, especially for the public and all that. It's a business area around there with restaurants, office parks. We want to make sure that that's safe. Dallas Police is doing a great job securing that area, and they're making sure that there are no other individuals involved this time. But as of now, the area is secure, and we have no other indication that any more shooters are on scene.
Any indication this suspect was inside the ICE facility at any point?
No, it just appears that it was all taking place from an elevated position, a couple hundred yards away from the ICE facility. Secretary
Noem and many others have discussed the increased risk for ICE agents. You and I were talking about it right before we came on the air. Did this field office have extra security?
All of our offices have an increased presence now with security from Federal Protective Services. Just because, like I said, assaults and threats on officers are up 1,000% since January 20th.
1,000%.
1,000% more than we ever had. And it's just getting worse. And these keep getting elevated and elevated. In this field office itself, there was a bomb threat almost to the day where an individual came up claiming that he had a bomb strapped to him in August. And just in July, we had officers and agents ambushed about 40 minutes away in Alvarado, Texas, by a group with military-style weapons on July 4th. So it just, the attacks and threats on ICE agents just keep increasing, and it has to stop.
What are you looking for next in this investigation? What are the next steps here?
Next steps here is obviously identifying that shooter, seeing what his motive was, seeing if he had any support, seeing who funded him, where the weapon came from. And just really trying to figure out what went on in the situation. And obviously, next step for us is making sure that our officers and agents are safe. That's my biggest fear every night, especially with these increases, that everyone gets home safe every night. We've got to make sure our buildings and facilities are protected. Not only that, but for our other civilian employees as well as our detainees as well. That's my number one concern, is make sure everyone's safe. But we got to figure out what caused this incident today.
Could this change any protocols for ICE, like how you transfer detainees in open air and so on?
Yeah, so I'm thinking, obviously, like I said, my number one priority is making sure the men and women of ICE are safe, and whatever we can do to make sure that nothing like this happens again, and we take care of our people, as well as people that we're entrusted to. As far as ones we arrested, we're responsible for them as well. We have to make sure that everyone's safe.
What do you want people to understand right now?
What I want is people to understand that the men and women of ICE are doing a law enforcement mission. they're sworn law enforcement officers just like everyone else. And these attacks and the rhetoric and the threats against ICE agents and their families needs to stop for all law enforcement. In this operation in Dallas, it wasn't just ICE officers every day working out of there. We have the FBI, ATF, DEA, all our other federal partners and local partners. So any attack on an ICE facility, you're not attacking ICE. You're attacking just brave men and women in law enforcement who wear the badge every day. And that we got to make sure we protect those men and women.
Are you worried for your own safety?
I am, but I'm much more worried about the men and women under me. They're my number one reason, and I just want to make sure that they're protected every day.
What do you think your biggest challenge is now?
My biggest challenge is still doing our law enforcement mission, but protect ourselves. We've had to see an increase where, like in sanctuary jurisdictions, where we don't have cooperation, where we have to go into the community when local law enforcement won't turn over an individual to us, where we have to go and make that arrest. Instead of going out with 5 or 6 agents to make that arrest, we now have to go out 10, 12 to protect the team that's making the arrest. Never my 20-year career did I think that we'd have to send law enforcement to protect law enforcement while we're doing a mission.
Do you think ICE has to change how it conducts its raids at all?
I think we still need to focus on what we've been doing, which is using intelligence-based specific targets, going after the worst of the worst, and just still doing that law enforcement mission to prove that we are going after public safety threats. We need to focus on that. But obviously with situations like this, it won't deter us, but we have to make sure our posture is set that with men and women and our other federal partners go home safe every day. And
I want to bring in a former FBI agent, Brad Garrett, who's a contributor with us as well. Brad, what are you watching for in this investigation now?
I think a couple of things. One, as we talked about earlier, of perhaps the motive of the shooter, but more importantly, is he a lone actor? Is he connected to other people that have motivations to do the same thing? Now, it's still unclear to me, obviously, who the target was here. Was it ICE employees? Was it, folks in some form of immigration status that may have been around where the shooting occurred? We'll have to see, because that does give you some direction maybe of where to go in an investigation. But the key component, obviously, is the shooter and what is known about him. And my guess is, because we're into, well over a couple of hours of this shooting, that they know who he is, who he's connected to. But that's really the most important thing at this point, is to make sure they don't have another immediate threat. And secondarily, obviously, they're going to have to look, as the director pointed out, additional security, even places where they upload and offload folks they arrest, that they're going to have to change, that maybe can't be in the open anymore. You can see logistically how that may be difficult.
Brad, what does that additional security look like when you have a sniper attack? I imagine that's one of the most hardest to protect against.
Totally. And it's not realistic to every time you bring people in and out of a facility, and let's face it, that's going to be big numbers today. To have snipers 24/7 on the various roofs around a building. So that would probably be driven via intelligence. But as far as the logistics, Diane, in other words, if you have a sally port, as they've described, I haven't looked at it yet, but where obviously a sniper has at least visual access to where people are brought in and ICE officers and agents are moving around, you're going to figure out some way to close that off. In other words, put up barriers that if, in fact, while they're doing their work, nobody can shoot them, at least from a building. Now, depending on the architecture and design and location of the building, that's going to drive how much you might have to do. But I mean, this is really a serious, serious problem for ICE. And, let alone, as the director pointed out, they're just having issues in communities in safely arresting people without their agents getting harmed. So I see this, majorly escalating for them from a security standpoint.
Director Lyons, your quick reaction to that, and where do you go from here?
I agree with what was said. We have to make sure that we reevaluate and look at how we're going to protect our officers and agents. But at the end of the day, like I said earlier, we're not going to be deterred. But, you know, obviously it's heavy on me to make sure that the men and women are safe, and we're going to have to make sure that we do everything we can to make sure that they go home every night.
All right. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons, former FBI agent Brad Garrett, thank you both.
Thank you.